When I navigate this thing called life and it gets rough and I can't see the trench from the dam, I hear my grandmother, bury your toes. It means I must stand strong, I must be resilient, I must persevere because I'm a damn girl. And this is a damn story, and she taught me how to navigate the damn dam. Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Pauline Baird, cultural bearer from the village of Buxton, Guyana, South America, and I tell our stories, our family histories, our whispered stories, our long lost and sometimes forgotten traditions. And in my village we say, oh, what the story say? Come in, sit down, let we talk story. To my regular viewers on YouTube and Facebook, you know what I do. I tell these stories. But do you know that these stories travel far and wide? So a couple of months ago, I was contacted by some Africans to tell the story of the people. You know, the Africans are from the continent, and they're just as curious and fascinated with our stories as perhaps we are with theirs. So I'm working in a project to bring our stories to their minds and their knowledge. And I'm going to tell y'all today some damn story. You want to hear the damn story then? Let me listen. Many people heard about dams. And we heard about the dams from Satira upon the Dam, a local and a folk tale and a folk story in song. We heard about Sanko and the lover upon the dam. We heard of Jenny Gal upon the dam. All these damn stories. Well, I got my own damn story. How many of you have lived on dams or lived on a dam? Not very many people. But if you're from the village of Buxton, you know about dam living. I grew up, in part, living on Brush Dam. In my village, there are many dams. Buxton Millowalk Dam, Company Dam, and Brush Dam. You have Pan Dam and Bamboo Dam. The same bamboo dam that Satira bin pan and lay down there and wine like a boxing board. So, what can I say about dams? For those of you who don't understand village, because one of my African friends, when I talk about the village, she had a different idea. She thought about huts and whatever African images came to her mind. But in our village, a dam was an access way that was built during the time of enslavement for convenience to get to the plantations. So if you look at my village, Buxton, it's a relic of the past. There are dams, which are roadways, and there are waterways that are called trenches or canals, and there are house lots. The house lots were former plantation beds, cotton plantation beds, for example, or maybe sometimes sugarcane plantation beds. And then they were called cambered beds. And so we have dam and trench with bridge over and house lot. Sometimes you have two dams and two sets of bridges. So when you look at my village, it's bridges all the way down. And I haven't seen that much in around the world. I heard that thing is in Amsterdam, and I think I saw some of it in Hawaii and sugar plantation. So I'm a girl from the dam, Brush Dam. Brush Dam is a little place that nothing much seemed to happen when I was a girl. You know, the regular run-of-the-mill, mothers and children, scolding children, people fishing in the trench, people jolling for fish in the trench, feeling in the trench, little boys climbing trees to get coconuts, mothers gossiping, washing at the standpipe, scrubbing the clothes with the hand like this, people going to market back and forth, lots of children playing in the street, cheersall, hopscotch, sometimes just catcha or hide and seek. That's where I grew up. 5 houses from the Atlantic Ocean. But I want to tell you a damn story. And this is a story I tell in the academy and I tell elsewhere. And these are the stories I'm going to tell the Africans who invited me to tell our stories. When I was about 7 years old or so, I lived with my grandmother on Watson Street, 89 Watson Street. And Watson Street is very historic for me. why Watson Street was so important. My grandmother was a Watson, Letitia Watson. We call her Ambab. And the Watsons were quite a generation. All of Watson Street, if you know it, they're like 2 blocks, I would say, if we think in terms of blocks. It ran from Brush Dam to Old Road Company. And all along there, understood, were Watsons, the Simons, the Dovers, and so on. And towards Old Road, there was a little house on the right-hand side, and it was called Head House. Reminded me of the Plantation Great House. But this house was called Head House. And my grandmother would go there with her siblings to deliberate on anything in the family that was big, whether it's land or funerals or whatever. They would go. As a little girl, I remember them going at night with me on my Uncle Orman's shoulder, and those guys were big, like linebackers. And he would have me on his shoulder, and they walk in the dark of night with the moonlight to go to Head House, and they talk about what they needed to talk about. I'm just creating a historical context for you to understand the story. So my grandmother's people owned all that land there along Watson Street, but she lived more on Watson and Brush Dam. So that's where I grew up. And in those times, the dams were made of mud or dirt. They were dirt roads. And because we lived near the Atlantic and the land was low, we were 7 feet or so below sea level, when the tide rose and the rain fell, the water had nowhere to go. We have what are called cokers or sluices that would pull the water from the land and take it to the Atlantic Ocean. But because it rained so much during the May-June rainy season, that the water couldn't get off the land, and that was a common occurrence. But I was just about 7, so I don't know it as a pattern. But all I knew, at this time, the waters rose as the rain fell. Rain fell day 1, day 2, day 3. By day 3 or so, my grandmother would hold my hand, take me to the bridge, and the bridge was barely above the water, and the water had started to inundate the dam. So there was just a little passage of mud that we had to navigate, of dirt. So I walked to school. After about the 4th or 5th day, that wasn't a thing you could do anymore. So my grandmother took off my socks and shoes, put me on her back, took me across the bridge. Now you can't barely see the bridge. And she got to the mud dam, you could barely see the dam, and she walked me to Watson Street Bridge, took me over the bridge, right in front of Cousin Enrata and the Abrams, put on my shoes and sent me on my way to school. I must have been in Big ABC or something. Okay, by the 5th, 6th day, you could not see the bridge or the dam. And my grandmother would put me on her back. She had to be in her 60s or something like that, or late 50s. She put me on her back and took me down the street. And now the dam looks like a river. There's ripple and everything. You could even see fish. Yeah. And so she took me to Watson Street, crossed the bridge, and put me down. And that was the routine. Put on my socks and shoes, my yachting shoes, and send me on my way. Well, one morning she said to me, when you come at midday, call me. Okay? Okay, grandmother? So I started thinking in my head, how am I going to call my grandmother for her to hear me from Watson Street? Because there was a house between me and my grandmother. So, an obedient child, I decided to do it. So when I got out of school, I got there. And now you can't even see the street bridge. Everything is one flood zone. It's like a whole river. And so I got there and I said, grandmother! And I heard, oh! And she came. And when I saw my grandmother coming, my grandmother was a tall woman, maybe 6 feet tall. And she had her skirt hiked up at the hip, tucked in the panty line, the panty foot, or the drawers foot. I think they used to wear drawers back in the day. Tucked up, if you know what I mean. And my grandmother's bare legs were coming through the water. And my grandmother had a signature hum. Whatever him or whatever. And she was humming and coming. She walked down the dam. Of course, I couldn't see the dam. She came over the bridge and she came to me. Usually, she would put me on her back. This time was different. She took off my shoes and my socks and she held my hand. And I put my foot on the bridge. I could feel the bridge. And she's in front of me and she's holding my hand and I'm coming behind her all across the bridge. And when we got to the end of the bridge, my grandmother stepped down onto the dam. And then I had to step down onto the dam. When I stepped on the dam, my people, oozy, mushy mud, you just squirted through my toes. And I tipped like this. But she had me. She had me in a grip. Now, my grandmother positioned her body towards where the trench would be, this way. And she held my hand with her left hand. So there was a trench that I couldn't see, the dam, and me on the dam, and my grandmother in between. And we started walking. Every footstep I made, I wobbled. Every footstep I wobbled. I ducked this way and that way. But she had me with her strong left hand. And as I slipped, she said, Pickney, bury your toe. Bury your toes. And I buried my toes. I kind of pushed my toes down. And as I pushed my toes down through the oozy, squishy mud, I got the land. And I was firmer. And I could walk more secure. And we walked to my grandmother's bridge. And when we got to the bridge, we went over the bridge. And that happened several times until the flood abated. That's a dam story I want to tell. You see, the Africans are not interested in coffee and kwame and akara and that. They're interested in the people who lived after them and the stories that I can tell. And so when I tell the dam story, I tell the dam story to talk about the resilience of the African women, and how our stories intersect with the land, geography, and memory, and resilience, and what survival looks like. Do you know that we are just 2 grandmothers away from enslavement? My grandmother's grandmother was a slave, was an enslaved person. My grandmother's mother was an enslaved person. You know that? I talked to my cousin Vadney Talbot, who died at 113. That was my grandmother's youngest cousin. And she took me back to 1882 about our progenitors. And I went into deep search for the women of our village. Because the enslavement story is just one story. I'm tired of telling that story. I'm just sick and tired of telling that story. I want to talk about the people who won. I want to talk about the ordinary people and how they did it. My grandmother taught me how to navigate the land, how to navigate the floodwaters, and it's a metaphor for life. So I cannot sit down on this type of resilience and just squander it. Not with mind, not with body, not with soul. When I navigate this thing called life, and it gets rough, and I can't see the trench from the dam, I hear my grandmother, bury your toes. It means I must stand strong, I must be resilient, I must persevere because I'm a damn girl. And this is a damn story, and she taught me how to navigate the damn dam. Yes. And so I walk tall in the academy. I walk tall in life. I show up tall in my family's life. When you see these children want to give me heartache, I got to tell them the hard story. And I got to tell them, you got to navigate this land by being tough. And you do it also with a sense of responsibility. And my grandmother wasn't a tough woman. My grandmother was a humming woman. But she had an inner strength, a couch with her softness. Anybody knows Ambab knows. She was such a joy to know. A pleasant woman. Never heard a bad word out of Ambab. Wasn't a rough person. And so when I deal with my siblings and my siblings' children, I go the same way. Gentleness with toughness. Because we are made of tougher stuff. We are the women from the dam. and they're descendants of the people from the dam. Brush Dam is my dam. And so, these stories are redemptive stories because for every dam there's a bridge. And I am that bridge. What bridge are you for your family and for the people who have come before us? What kind of bridge are you? I'm a girl whose people descended from the Watsons from Head House. And Head House is very, very significant in our story. That's where we get our community from. That's where our DNA runs from. All those women like Aunt Etty and Bob and Aunt Ivy and Aunt Lulu and these women. They're men too. But I talk about the woman because my grandmother gave me so much. Who is your grandmother? And who gave you your damn story? Who gave you your resilience, your story of resilience? Yeah, talk the story. That's one damn story. I'm going to tell you another damn story. So listen in. Don't forget to subscribe. Click that button, the notification bell if you're on YouTube. Click follow if you're on Facebook. Until next time when I tell you another damn story. Yeah, good.